for the ABR Audiobook Listener Awards come to an end. The entry period comes to an end December 31st, 2018. And you can enter any book, almost every genre. I think I've got most of the bases covered. Published anywhere between November 1st, 2017, all the way to December 31st, 2018. Rox, you're like, all you can see is your head here. Like from the middle of your chin up.
Which chairs? You got the wrong chair.
You cleaned up your desk. One with the lamp on it.
I did. I have all 4 of the Helldivers hardcovers over here.
Signed?
Yeah.
Nice. Hi, I'm Paul Stokes, the audiobook reviewer.
And I'm Brian, the bearded beer-drinking founder of Brian's Book Blog.
And we're the audiobook bums that bring you Audiobooks After Dark,
A video podcast about audiobooks. Tonight we are with authors Roxanne E. Burkey and Charles V. Breakfield. We are also with narrator Derek Shoales.
Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks.
I read it earlier, Paul, and I didn't like your and then your and again, and I was going to change it, and then I didn't. Because it's like we were sitting with this person, and this person, and this person, and it messed with my head.
Well, it's like authors and...
I know, and I knew why you did it, which is why I didn't change it.
And seriously,
then I butchered it, so.
You can just call us Breakfield and Burkey, really.
Okay.
You don't have to go through the whole long name. It's like crazy.
So this is a question for all 3 of you. You know, we want to tell us a little bit about yourself. What does a typical day for you look like? And
Okay, I'll jump in.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I actually have a full-time job. I spend my days doing customer experience optimization for corporate America. And in doing that, I take existing technologies that they have on-prem, and maybe I take them to the cloud, or I augment with other kinds of technologies to help make sure that they provide the best customer experience in the world. So that's the regular job. Of course, I do kind of get up at 5 o'clock and start writing, and then I stay up until about 9 o'clock doing social media. And in between there, I listen to my wonderful narrator audio chapters. Only because he's recording right now, so he's providing us little chapter vignette.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm a techno geek. I work in the unified communication space for building voice data networks for Fortune 50 companies around the planet. They basically scramble me to go fix what the salesman has sold. So that's sort of what my day job looks like, and I'm not trying to shine you on, Derek, but it's always a treat when Roxanne texts me and says, "Quick, get home fast. We got new stuff to listen to."
As long as you guys are happy with it, that's all that matters. Because at the time, I'm going, God, this is horrible. It doesn't sound right. I don't think this is good. This is the 5th take.
I'm going to ask you. I mean, what happens? Some of the stuff that we put together cracks us up, and we're just laughing hysterically. Some of these chapters, I can imagine you getting halfway through and just getting tickled and laughing your socks off, and you're like, okay, I got to do this one again, but I got to read it a couple times so I can get through the choke points.
There was one time you guys put in this. Oh goodness gracious! The character was actually like really butchering the lyrics to a song, and I had to look up the song because I'm like, I don't remember that like this, and I had to listen to it. I'm like, okay, that's the part of it, and it took me like so many times to just get right through that one.
Okay, all right. It was the Lonnie Lutner tune, that it came through, and it was a spinoff that we'd done, and yes, it was deliberately mangled. For the reader's enjoyment.
Yeah, I will say whenever it's like, I was kind of sad that this book doesn't have too much of it, but Juan and his brother, the interactions are where I'm like, every time I see them pop up in a chapter when I'm proofing, I'm like, oh, this is going to be hard. This is going to be hilarious. All right.
So is it harder to do the funny parts, or is it harder to do the really sad, somebody's dying part?
For me, it takes a little bit. I have to read a few times to make sure I'm getting it right. But I find them both I think, well, no, actually, I'd say the humor is harder because there's so many different ways to actually read comedy. And, do you make it to be very sarcastic comedy? Do you make it straightforward? So it really depends on who the characters are that we've already built such a history with them, and that I kind of know that if it's Juan, okay, he's got this charming kind of like, he has a carefree kind of an attitude to it. So I can usually guess that the humor is going to be like that. But if it's a new character, I got to read through to figure out exactly what's his emotional aspect, and how he actually thinks, and like that makes it easier. But I would say actually, if long story short, the comedy is probably the harder one to actually do. Yeah.
And I interrupted you introducing yourself, so
I hadn't actually. I was waiting for. It's always the hardest part. Well, I'm transitioning right now. I technically will still have a full-time job, but I've been an interactive project manager during the day where I manage automation software. I do user experience design work, so it's still kind of a combination graphic design project management. But after the kids are in bed, that's actually when I would get up and I'd start doing recording. Record about a few 3 or 4 hours a night. But now things have been going really good, so I'm actually in the process of switching, and the company I work for is really great. They're willing to change my schedule so that I work at night, and I'm transitioning more into just more of like a webmaster, focusing on our web initiatives. So during the day from 8 or 9 in the morning until I have to leave to get to work, I can now do just voiceover straight. So it's going to be a completely different, a lot easier for me. A lot easier to get stuff done because I'm no longer trying to work around, the weird sounds and the kids and, waiting for them to go to bed. Now I can just straight up start working like a normal job.
So tell us a little bit about your Enigma series.
For those that don't know.
Yes.
Well, the Enigma series is actually based off of historical attributes, the Enigma machine. It was actually built in 1923. It was an encryption device that the Dutch had toyed with. The Germans really got jazzed by it, and so the Germans took it, saw what a swell idea was, and they used it for encrypting all of their military traffic, all of the traffic on their between their ambassadors for the different countries, and nobody was able to break it. Well, the Germans, as you know, overran Poland in 1939, the start of World War II, and they ran in so fast that the Poles didn't have a chance, but they overran their position. The Poles actually grabbed the German ambassador's Enigma machine and put it on the last plane to Britain, along with all of their government folks in absentia. So just before they put it on the plane, they copied it. And the 3 men that copied it learned all of the secrets and learned to be able to decrypt and use that information. And because of their historical backgrounds and fighting the Nazis and oppression, they wanted to build a dynasty of information brokers that brings us right up to today's information aware social media infected daytime type activities that are driven by your cell phone, and all of the computers basically trace their origin back to the Enigma machine and the machine they built to break it.
So those 3 men that took a copy of the Enigma machine and ran to Switzerland with it, that's where they formed the R Group, which is the foundation of our good guys for our series.
That's
But
super
it's all
interesting.
current day, even though we kind of reflect a little bit on history and keeping the moral high ground. It all happens for today's relevant kinds of technologies.
So what we like to be able to do is take some of the exploits that we see on a regular basis, because I get to see a lot of the stuff that, like, okay, how do we defeat this? The bad guys are in here. So a lot of the stuff that we bake into the series is actual real exploits, and sometimes we take them just a notch higher. So it gives us that extra depth, and a lot of times the technology that we see is actually included as the foundation with the backstories for the main story, the fun.
That's great. I was going to ask where the idea for this series came from. You kind of touched on that a little bit.
So we've by the time we get finished with the series, we've got somewhere over 150 characters that we have. Poor Derek tearing his hair out, like trying to. He goes, "Okay, what voice do I use for this one?" And I imagine he's got a spreadsheet and inventory. Okay, this is the way Juan sounds, and this is the way that Carlos has got to be able to come across. And Easy sounds like this.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's
And it's not just a sheet. It's like a Google workbook I've got. Like I've lost count of the tab. Audio samples, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, hang on, I got to pull it up. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I need a new voice here. We have a new evil character coming on board. Whenever we get interviewed on TV, I usually do the interview the gal that we have on Channel 8. I like to flirt with those ladies, and I always kind of lean over to them saying, "We're looking for a new evil temptress. Can I pattern them after you? Can you get a resume?" Well, that's lush. It was fun.
So Charla wants to know, are any of the characters based on the two of you?
On the two of us.
Yeah.
I think in several of the characters, there are elements of ourselves, because that way we can kind of get a feel for how somebody should or shouldn't. One of the best things about writing as a guy-girl kind of a co-author is we do double check each other on, because we write the whole thing separately and then we kind of put it together. So we have a way of going, Charles will go, no guy in the world would ever do what you just said he was going to do. So he'll fix that. And vice versa. So I Derek, you're probably the best take on this because you've gone through a lot of stories so far.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the behavior of a guy versus a girl has been pretty good.
Yeah, I was always kind of curious, like who handled what in the stories, and I could kind of pick up little elements that I thought were unique to each of you. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I thought conversations were legitimate. I didn't hear anything that, like, I've listened to some audiobooks, I've read some stories where I'm going, yeah, right. I don't think any of my friends or I would ever say that. My God, I'd get slapped in the face if I was to say something like that. And I haven't gotten any of that. So I think you guys have done a really good job of kind of like proofing checking each other on that. Yeah.
And that kind of leads kind of into a question we had written down too. So tell us a little bit about the dual author writing process. Do you kind of switch off chapters? Do you kind of pick pieces you're each going to write, or kind of tell us a little bit about that process?
So we've kind of coined a term for this, and we do something called literary ping pong. So I will write a chapter, and he'll write a chapter, and we'll bat it back and forth to each other until we kind of get it the way we want it. But in all seriousness, I keep track of most of the chapters on a spreadsheet. All the characters are on a spreadsheet. So I don't have the voice part attached to it like Derek does, but I do have their descriptions, where they're from, even down to when they start to, some of the couples are like getting married and stuff like that. So I have copies of what girl has what color ring and how did that apply to whatever sometime future in the series. But we talk about it a couple times a week, and we outline where we want to go with the character or with the story thread. And then we each write individual chapters, and then we trade them. And I probably do the last pass before we go to the editors to make sure that it sounds like one voice.
Yeah, I think that would be the most difficult part, would be to make it feel like one voice, because everybody does write a little bit differently. And I think that's neat that you guys have that going into it. Like, you don't want it to be like, oh, I can tell Burkey wrote this chapter, and I can tell that, Breakfield wrote this chapter. You don't really want that, the separation, which makes sense. Right. It makes the book a lot easier to read. But Derek, do you have access to that spreadsheet she's talking about with all the characters?
No. Thankfully, they do give me a guy, because I've started working with a few other authors. I swear, Charles and Roxanne have been like a very high rank to meet up with, because they do provide a ton of info in the beginning. Like, aside from the manuscript, I get like a pronunciation guide. I mean, it's good that I've had background. Like years ago, I worked for Apple and stuff. So I've got like tech background, but there's some of the tech that they want that I haven't had familiarity with. So it's good for that. There's the definitions. And then they always give me like character info, which is like invaluable. Like, this is the person, this is their nationality, this is the languages. Like the series I'm doing now, the Gamer series, like this one has a whole, like, they were minor characters. So they were only barely developed, but now they're like, in my mind now, fully fleshed out. And the hard part for some of them, and some of these guys speak like 5, 6, 7 languages, and it's like, well, what one is their predominant? Do they speak their national language, or have they lived long enough in another country to pick up some of the elements of that native language? So these guys, they give me a ton of info. I don't have that spreadsheet, but what they give me is certainly beneficial in all sorts of ways.
Good. Yeah, there's a voice you recently did in a chapter that we reviewed yesterday or the day before, because you gave us a whole slew of chapters, and we've
Yeah.
only been able to kind of listen to 4 or 5 at a time, because it's after work and after dinner and that.
Oh, sure.
But you just did a character called Sarge, and the way you did Sarge,
Okay.
And he's a veteran, and he's a street person,
yeah.
and he's and
Homeless guy,
and
yeah.
It makes me want to bring him back in another story, and unfortunately,
Cool.
this is his debut, and he just
Excellent.
doesn't come back. But now I want to bring him back because you've got him so.
Yeah.
I like the voice.
Yeah, the characterization that you did with that was, we listened to it. Actually, I want to listen to it again. I'll probably go back and listen to it now. Now that you brought that up. So, but it was it hit a very particular nerve. I thought that you did really well on that one.
It was a tough one. It was probably, it was fun. He was probably one of the more nuanced characters I think that I've done, because you can take a veteran in such a stereotypical way, and he's homeless. He's been there for a while, but not terribly long. They're trying to find the balancing act for how to do it respectfully, and to say, this guy's got a ton of experience. He's lived through some bad shit, and he's watched friends die. That's going to impact him regardless. Now, and he's in the military. He was in the military, so he's used to that, but it's still going to hit him. I mean, we talk about PTSD all the time. So how I had to think about, like, how much is that impacting him? Does he go through it? What does the story tell me? And there is a little bit of it. He's got that one interlude where he's thinking back and he's remembering some things, and it's kind of like, yeah, no, this is hard. So that was a tough one. Yeah.
Well, you handled it perfectly.
We're glad to stretch you here and there. How about that?
It's always good. I like adding more to the files, as they say.
150 characters wasn't enough, Derek. They had to throw you up.
And the funny part of it is, during our business careers in technology, we have traveled all over the world. So a lot of these places that come up in the stories are because one of us has been there through, one trip or another. Charles and his wife go travel to Istanbul, and, you're going to find it in the story, one of the stories somewhere.
Well, very cool. So, Derek, Stephen J. Cohen narrated the first book, and you have done the rest of the series. How does it feel to come into a series that was started by a different narrator? And do you think that you've made it your own since then?
This is a hilarious short story I'll give you. He's actually one of my coaches, and I had not realized. I took a look at the previous one, but it didn't click with me who the narrator was. And I'm starting to go with him, and I go to Steven and I say, dude, I need some help with this series. So we start going through it, and he goes, well, read me some of the manuscripts. I'm like, okay, great. So I read it. He's like, hang on, is there this character? I'm like, yeah. What do you want? He's like, yeah, I read the first book. I'm like, wait. I pull up Audible. I'm like, oh my God, seriously? I didn't know this. So, and it was one of those things where I kept apologizing for some strange reason. He's like, don't. And he gave me some good advice I stick with now, where it's kind of like he did the in like TV series, he did the pilot episode, and I'm basically doing the follow-up seasons. And my take is certainly different than his. My narration style is vastly different than Stephen J. Cohen's, for good or bad. So yeah, I think by this point the characters, started off with him, and I think there is some elements of the way he he built them up, but I do certainly feel like they've become my own kind of characters now. I mean, it's very easy for me to slip into them now when I'm narrating. I don't really have to do a lot of prep as far as what does the character sound like. It's only for like the new characters that I have to kind of prep now a little harder.
I'd have to say I was in violent agreement with that. I think that's your series. You're that series of voices, and it's there's a comfort factor between us and Derek. So I'm glad to be able to work with him.
Yeah, and I really like your analogy to the pilot versus the full run of the series, because that I've watched TV shows where they literally change a character. They're like, nope, this person didn't work, or even like I just started watching Bob's Burgers, and the animation got better from the pilot to even the second episode, and then from season 1 to season 2, you get of a better series. So it's a really great analogy. I never thought of that, but I kind of asked this when we've got both a narrator and authors that have worked together for more than one book. Do you guys find yourself writing characters for him? Not necessarily, I mean, you obviously say to challenge him, but also just, is his voice in your head, or is a certain voice he's done, or is the way that he narrates kind of in your head now when you're writing your new books?
That's a really good point. I'd have to say yes. When I write certain characters that are recurring characters, I do know how Derek will probably speak that and take that. And, I don't think he's reading the series ahead of where they are, because right now he's on book 7 and we just released book 10. So I don't think you haven't read ahead, have you, Derek?
No, I mostly stick with the current books within the story arc within that book. Yeah.
Which is important because in the series, the characters evolve and they change. And I kind of worry that he'll find out what's going to happen to some of these characters before he's ready for that particular book. And we dearly hope he stays with us for the rest of the series.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we have no ending point for the series, Derek.
Okay.
No ending.
Cool. I got no problem with that. I love the series. So like, it's become like my steak and mashed potatoes. It's like my favorite. I just like sitting down and just having it. Sure, a nice broccoli is good every once in a while, but stick me a nice slab of meat. Like this is where I am right now. Like I'm starting to work with this another guy that's doing he does these short stories, and he's doing this sci-fi dark comedy, and it's so vastly different. And I do a little bit, then I come back to this. I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. This is home.
Good.
Awesome. So Derek, tell us a little bit about your narration process. How long do you usually record for? All that good stuff.
Yeah. Well, the narration process usually it starts obviously when I get the manuscript itself, and I get the notes. So the first thing I do is obviously I listen through to the pronunciation guide and listen for any things that they think are going to be stumbling blocks. Again, I've had some tech background, so it's helpful, but there's obviously different languages and stuff. There's different, like they do pepper in some like German or some French terminology, and it's good to get like a backdrop on that. So I go through that. That takes like a few, reading through the manuscript takes like a good 2 or 3 days for me to actually kind of digest it. Then I have to go back through and start, figuring out what is the arc of the characters. Is there new characters? What are they doing in the story? So that can take upwards of a week to 2 weeks for me right now, again, because of the shortened schedule. That'll obviously change once I switch over. But it's more or less getting the foundation ready, figuring out where the story's going. And I tie back, and I'll tell you, like, it wasn't like the last book I did. The villain I was reading was completely different than what he ended up being. And it was only one sentence in like one of the 40s chapters of 40s or so, 42 or something like that. And it was almost like you could say like a throwaway line where one of the hero characters is reviewing a VCR tape of this guy him talking. And I had read the villain as like this deadpan, unemotional like guy. But it got to this point, and they said he reacted visibly, and we're talking VHS playback. So, the grainy, the tracking, the fact that the people watching this video could see this guy angry and getting raged. I'm like, he clearly has emotions. There's something here. So I had to go back when I read that. I had to go back and start reading it in my head before I started recording. And I'm like, it totally changed the whole character for me. So that prep work is critical to make sure I'm not missing some little thing down the line that might throw everything else off. And then after that, it's just, getting in the booth and start going chapter by chapter. Usually the average is like, it's 3 times per the finished hour. So reading like a 10-minute chapter could take me 30 minutes to go punch and roll back and forth, re-record, make sure I got the tone right, make sure I got that. Then I hand it off to the proofer who listens it, make sure I got all the words, and then I can get it back, clean it up, and then send it on to Charles and Roxanne for final approvals. So that's about the process right there. And I send it in batches to, obviously, like 5-10 chapters so that it gives them something to work off of.
You don't want to send them like a 10-minute chapter. Like, that's all you get.
Yeah, you're good. You're good for another one.
Just a little tiny taste, just a little nibble.
Until next week.
Well, then we have to play that chapter 14 times so that we get our, our fix.
Better fix, yeah.
How often do you guys find, I won't even say mistakes, but like changes you want Derek to change up when he sends in? Does that happen often, or is it kind of just a once in a blue moon type of thing?
Once in a blue moon. I mean, there's all the prep work that we try to outfit Derek with. I always worry about. I hope he's not offended by me pronouncing this one, because I just,
No, not at all.
But it's coaching so that he doesn't stumble or he doesn't have to re-record something. That's the ambition. So it's having him well armed for being able to go in and immerse himself into the characters. That's what makes the story sparkle for me.
So I think the last book that you did, which was always, I think we found 2 words that we had not given you pronunciations for. And I ended up having to give you a note and say, okay, our bad, we did not give you this particular word, and you fixed it. And this one so far in Gamers, and you're up to 50, or we've listened up through 50.
Yeah, I mean, I've got up to 60 recorded and stuff, but, obviously it's proofing right now. So, yeah, I think it's like up to 50. Yeah, I think I've only given up to 50. I got up to 53 that's finally cleaned up, yeah.
So we've listened to 50 and not one faux pas.
Nice.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Pretty good record. So you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. You said Derek is currently recording book 7. When do you guys expect that to be available?
Christmas, maybe. Christmas, Derek.
Oh, yeah. Easily, yeah. We're right now. The hardest part is trying for my proofer to keep catching up. My wife is my proofer. She used to work in advertising and marketing, doing scripts and stuff. So this is kind of up her alley. So it's kind of funny watching her listen to it, because I'm very critical of my own voice. I hate listening to it after I'm done. So I'm just kind of going, does it sound good? Is it okay? Is it really good? Yeah, I think we'll be done with that, definitely with our part this next week, I think, easily. So it'll definitely be done before the end of the month, and probably even out in ACX. Well, ACX is ACX whenever they get around to finishing their stuff.
Plus, we have Thanksgiving next week, so
Yep.
you've got family stuff going on. So that's why I'm saying if it's out by Christmas, is kind of what we're hoping for.
Yeah, it'll easily be before that, yeah.
Excellent. And you guys said you do not see an end to the series in sight at the moment?
No, we're actually scheduling book number 11.
Nice.
So,
All right.
Yeah, book 10 is the we got really jazzed by the cryptocurrencies and the bitcoins. That's what book number 10 was about. Book number 11, we get off into we're having a little trouble trying to structure it, because it's the working title is the AI Wars. Who won? So artificial intelligence is moving in faster than what we can. I can get ahead of it. So it's showing up in a lot of different technical areas. So trying to write about that and structure it so that it's in present day without looking like a sci-fi novel. That's sort of some of the structure we're batting back and forth using that. And I will tell you, that literary ping pong is a patent pending term. So.
So Make sure you put that little. Is it a trademark? Is it just a?
trademark, yeah.
All right. So put the little TM next to it, Paul, when
Yeah,
you put it into
definitely.
into your description. I'm gonna jump ahead. I had another question later on that really kind of lends itself to what you just said. So, are you planning on working on any other series or any other books outside of the Enigma series, or together or separately? Is there anything you guys are planning that way?
I love it when you get the cue cards. I think that's really awesome. And we only just met. So this particular series will continue on because technology, the way we have it today, is continually changing. So we will always have subject matter for this particular series. But we are looking at doing, of all things, a children's series. So taking the same themes that we have in the big series or the adult series, because it's an adult series. It's not something you'd let kids read. Not my kids anyways. But taking the same kind of thing about identity theft and, being careful and security and all of those things and putting it into an 8 to 10-year-old framework and doing some kids books. We're kicking that around. And we have the short stories that we do too.
Well, and to be fair too, I mean, the book number 7 is actually the working title for it was the Cat's Tail, Cyber Assassin Technology Services, and they were strictly speaking a spin-off from the R group. So we've actually got a second series already working, and book number 9 that you'll come into to look at some point, Derek. It's the second second book in that series.
Nice.
But it's still under the umbrella of the Enigma series. So
cool.
We actually already have 2 series that we're working on.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I think in your guys' heads too, it's probably easier to spin off in the same world because you've been building that world for 10 books now. You know what I mean? It's probably easy to go, okay, we've talked about this thing in book 3. I can spin it off into a kid's story. I can spin it off into this character was, like you just mentioned with the way that Derek recorded it, like maybe he has a really neat backstory. It could be a short story. It could be a novella, that kind of thing. But I think that in my head, that makes sense too. And I like the kids' idea too, because you could talk about a lot of the stuff they're going to walk into and never knew it didn't exist. Yeah. Like I was just thinking about like a keyboard class. I had a keyboard class, and I don't think they teach it anymore because you just kind of grow up with a keyboard in your hand and you learn it. You don't know how to type properly, but you know how to type as soon as you kind of get to a regular keyboard. So it's a really cool idea. I like it.
That's a funny comment. We worked with a delightful gentleman, Tony, that I always wondered why it took him so long to get anything typed. And one time we're sitting down, I'm not the keyboard. I took the keyboard class just like you, and it was called typewriters, though. Just so you know, that's I'm not thinking. Anyway, it was cool because the typewriter class was mostly female, so it was a target-rich environment. Anyway, but he looked at me at one point and said, "You use all your fingers to type?" Really? And I went, "Doesn't everybody?" He goes, "No, watch." And he used the 2 fingers.
Oh, the hunt and pack type.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no wonder he never got anything done on time. So.
I also work in tech, and I actually saw a guy typing like that, and I thought, how? Thankfully, he's not an engineer. Like it's not his. I couldn't even imagine trying to get like code written hunt and pack.
Oh, goodness gracious.
But I walked by him, and I literally stopped and had to turn around. I was like, wait a second, do you? And he looked at me, he's like, don't even say it. Don't even say it.
That's why these young people are so happy for speech recognition, man.
Right?
What he should have said is, justifications looked at you and said, birth defect. That's it. No, sorry.
So I got to tell you, Derek, in our wildest dreams, we really hope that sometime this series will become on film, like
oh yeah,
Netflix,
that'd be cool.
Whatever the case is. But we're going to vote that you get to do the voice of Ichabod no matter what.
Nice. All right.
That's
in the contract.
We're not gonna. That's non-negotiable. There it is.
Nice. I like that. I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And for Paul and the other engineer there, Ichabod is actually an acronym. We love acronyms.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
It's the supercomputer name, and rather than use his full name, which is the Immersive Collaborative Associative Binary Determinist Override of Deterministic Systems, we call him Ichabod. So,
For obvious reasons.
for obvious reasons, right?
Imagine narrating the
Yeah,
unabridged acronym in one breath. That took like a few times right there.
That's one of those where you record it once and you just always use that audio. You just keep playing. I'm never saying this again. I'm just, man, why did the audio? He had an old mic, and nope, I'm not recording it again. I'm not touching it.
Nope.
So, Brian, where are you versus where is Paul?
I am in Niagara Falls, New York, and
And I'm in Madison, Wisconsin.
and where are you guys?
So we're in Dallas.
So I believe this is a Charlie question.
Yes.
So Charlie wanted to know, will we see new villains that are going to be different from what the group is used to dealing with in the series coming up?
Yes. It's so delicious to have villains because, well, you've been in tech, right? So, and I've been in tech for a long time. And so the population between girls and boys in tech is kind of heavy-handed one way versus the other.
Yeah.
It takes a very long time in technology to get guys to respect that you have a brain. Just trying to be honest.
I've seen it. I understand.
And so, unfortunately, there are certainly some guys that are not nice along those lines either. You can have fun. Yeah, you can tease. Yeah, you can. But then there's some that are just, they're just bad tempered to begin with. They're dying in the series, and it's so much fun.
So I have to ask.
Yes,
and they don't die just a little bit. No, they die in horrific ways.
We got a couple of them that I won't ruin it for you, but we get even with people.
So are some of those people actually based on people you knew from your?
Oh, yeah.
No hesitation.
No hesitation.
I kind of knew the answer. I just wanted to be sure.
So Derek, you were saying you wanted to, try and figure out whether Charles wrote a part or I wrote a part. Any guy that is totally obliterated, I promise you.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, I totally ground him up. Yeah, no, that's me. Totally. Hey, yes, ma'am.
It's the only legal way you can hurt people.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Oh, so Derek, how did you get into narrating? What was your path to get there?
Oh man,
Or here.
every actor will tell you it's a completely wacky, weird way.
Yeah.
Why it's a question, because it's always fun to hear why.
Yeah.
I think most of us who grew up in the 70s, 80s and such, I grew up on the old Transformers, G.I. Joe cartoons and stuff, and it didn't put two and two together. There was actually a living human being actually doing that voice of those characters. Frank Welker, Peter Cullen, those guys, Mel Blanc, obviously. And it wasn't until I got into high school and started doing stage theater and stuff like that you kind of heard about it, but it's kind of like hand-drawn animation. Is it really a career? Is that something you can really do? It wasn't until because I've been doing voice acting for about 6 years now, and it wasn't until like about 7 years ago that something clicked, and I don't remember what it was, like a conversation, but I suddenly realized, wait, well, no, this actually could be a viable career. This actually could be something to do. So I went and I actually drove to Canada. And I found that there was a voice actor up there.
Which isn't very far, just an FYI. People don't think you drove forever, but it's not very far at all.
No, it's not. No, and this unfortunately was after the ferry was shuttled. So, that didn't even give me a short path there. But he actually did these in the booth evaluations. And, Rochester had, at the time, there's nobody. I mean, there is apparently a growing community of voice actors now. But at the time when I was looking, there was nobody doing coaching, nobody doing anything. We don't even have talent agents up here, really. So I drove up there, and he put me in the booth for 3 hours, and we recorded the whole thing. And he evaluated me, doing commercial stuff, regular corporate narration, e-learning. And after the whole thing was done, we were sitting in a pub afterwards, and he looks at me. He's like, you're probably the first stage actor I think that could actually make this a career. He's like, a lot of people tend to play to the back row. And, you know, especially when you're just doing a regular commercial and stuff, that's not what they want. So after that, I started doing some more coaching, some more training. I did about a year with actually a guy, I think Wisconsin, a voice actor, Terry Daniel, for a year, learning corporate and commercial narration from him. Started doing that. And when my schedule shifted, I shifted into working like a day shift at that point, because at the time when I started, I was doing a B shift. I realized, well, crud, I can't do commercial. I can't do directed sessions. I'm not available during business hours for people to give me coaching, the casting directors. So I asked a Global Voice Acting Academy on their forums. I said, what kind of narration could I do now? And they're like, go long form. I'm like, okay. E-learning and audiobooks. I'm like, audiobooks? Oh my goodness. Okay. Like I knew about audiobooks, but I know they're a marathon. Like when you when you do them, that's like so okay, sure. So I started taking some coaching, and I figured, why not? Let's audition. And I figured I had my theater background. I knew how to read scripts and stuff. And first audition I did was actually for Charles and Roxanne. They were the very first one. And shockingly enough, I got it. I'm like, oh my goodness. Oh, wow. Cool.
Wow.
I started reading it. I'm like, oh my God, this is big. Like, oh God, this is a lot of chapters. But can I do this? So that was when I contacted Steve, and he worked me through a lot of stuff. And by that point, then, as they say, the rest is history. And like, it was awesome. I suddenly found out I actually loved it. Loved audiobooks because it's so much like being in stage performance, but I don't have to be up on a stage in front of an audience. I can just be all these different characters right here in the booth, and you know, portray so many different genders, ages, races, all that stuff. You know, it's awesome. So that's really how I got into it.
Oh, I was going to ask you related to your voiceover work. So how much different is like commercial voiceover acting to audiobook narration, just in a couple sentences? Because I'm sure there's a lot you could say.
There is.
But
let me put it this way. The unions treated them as completely two separate industries up until only a few years ago. Voice acting did not consider audiobook narration as a part of it for years, for some reason. And it wasn't only until SAG-AFTRA merged that they finally started to consider them the same thing. It's vastly different because radio commercially want natural speaking, and you do that in audiobooks, but you're multiple characters. It's a wholly different prep, wholly different time investment. It's drastic.
Sure. Makes sense. So, Derek, you kind of touched on it a little bit. Are you an audiobook listener yourself?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So give me some of your favorite books and or narrators.
Oh, goodness. Nick Podell's become one of my favorites.
Ooh.
I listened to the Land series. I've kind of got, I was at APAC last year, first time. And I was sitting in this thing with the casting directors, and somebody popped up, oh yeah, this new genre is lit RPG. I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. What? There's lit RPG?
Right? That was my reaction too.
I'm like, that's amazing, because I play D&D and stuff on the side, you know, whenever I have a very rare free moment. And I'm going, oh my God, seriously? This is a thing? Like, I went up to the cast room and seriously? And she's like, oh yeah, here, this is this. And I found like the Land series, and I started listening to that. And the first one I did was Sufficiently Advanced Magic, I think is what it was. And Nick Podell was the narrator. And I'm going, oh my God, this is amazing. Love it. So that was one of the ones I'm waiting for the next book in that series to pop out. I've been binge listening to the Land series, and I think I'm up onto, goodness gracious, Predators now.
Did you get to the 50-hour one yet?
I think that's this. I think this is this one. Like,
is that the series you were talking about, Paul?
Yes. That book, it's like 5 or 6 in the series, is longer than all the other books in the series combined.
Oh my goodness. It blew my mind when I saw it in the Audible app, and I'm going, wait, what chapter am I on? And I'm looking at this thing going, I'm only at 51 of 112? Like, seriously?
You're at 38% through this audiobook, even though you've listened to 27 hours.
It's a great story. I'm not bashing it at all, but I'm going, this was not what I was expecting. I'm like, I really wanted to send an applaud to Nick for having to narrate that, like 112 chapters. Oh my goodness. But those ones I've been listening to. I've also been listening to some nonfiction ones too, like Quitter. There was one that I'm coaching with another voice actor who does all exclusively nonfiction. So he sent me a few as well, like To Be or Not to Be, an actor, you know, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different ones I'm listening to right now.
And same question to you guys, Breakfield and Burkey. Are you guys audiobook listeners yourselves?
I am an audiobook listener, and I also do them for reviews. just because I help other authors, you know? I mean,
Paul's eyebrows shot up when you said that.
really?
It's always fun to find out people that are reviewers that you had no idea are.
Yeah.
But I do like to listen to him. I have a hard time if I don't like the book in doing a review that's not mean, because I don't like mean reviews, and I've had a couple of mean reviews.
Sure.
So, you know, and I was raised in a time when my mom said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So I kind of go on that vein too.
Yeah.
And you like to listen to audio some. If Derek's speaking, I know.
So is he your favorite narrator?
Yeah, so Derek is your favorite narrator.
I think there's a preferential treatment there.
Not to put too fine a point on it. Yeah, he is. Okay. I mean, no, part of my issue is that to stay current in the technical world, I'm usually consuming stuff as fast as I can. So to change gears and to do something for. If I'm going to read for or listen to something, it's going to be World War II, Eastern Front. That's where that's a historical passion I have for how did the world go insane. So I would like those are the things that I like to get into.
I can honestly say, though, I never listened to an audiobook at all until after Factor was done. So I had no frame of reference
Wow.
for an audiobook. And what had happened was someone said, you need to get your books on audio because that's where people are going. That's where the young people are going. That's where Charles's daughter is going. It's for audio. But I never listened to an audiobook. So the whole ACX and Audible and getting in there, that was all foreign ground for us. I mean, it really was. It was a very hard thing. And Richard Ryman was the gentleman that kind of helped us negotiate through that craziness, because we had no frame of reference for that. We could write tech manuals all day long. And that's how we started writing, was tech manuals, but they're so boring you can't kill people on them.
You can kill people with them, but you can't kill people. So do you have a favorite book or favorite narrator, since you said you have been listening more recently?
Outside of Derek, I like Richard Ryman. I really do like the way he does different stories. And he recorded a book with an author named Lisa. Boy, I can't remember her last name right this second. I'm really bad with names. But she did Flyboy. And they kind of, they did different sections of it. It was really good. And I should know her last name, and she'll probably kill me now that we're recording.
Lisa Reinecke?
Yes,
Yeah.
Reinecke.
Yeah, we'll probably end up in your book, and we'll be whacked this time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the book is called Football Flyboy.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's just a real one of those heart ones,
5-star rating and 6 reviews.
It's pretty good.
Yep, I'm one of those reviews, actually.
All right. Well, believe it or not, we've come to the end of our prepared questions, but there's always this one question that we save for last. Is there anything that we didn't talk about or didn't ask that you wish that we would have?
Oh, gee.
Wow.
You got any swell ideas? I mean, that we can cover. I mean, you already mentioned the fact that we want to be up on the big screen.
On the big screen. Or the little screen,
Or the
depending on
little
where
screen,
people
yeah.
are looking at Netflix.
Yeah.
I mean, either one works these days. Well,
And,
we certainly have 6 books out right now.
Yep.
And so I would encourage anyone who's listening to this to go ahead and get caught up on those 6 books before Gamers comes out at Christmas time. But we would like reviews. And unfortunately, in this world, the thumbs up, thumbs down, the reviews, all that kind of stuff is really what makes the world go round nowadays. It's crazy. And from technology perspective, we've never liked social media because it's so full of gaps and security gaps. And so it's been very hard to try and get that promoted, but it's very, very important. And we've got some more awards that we're, going in for. I don't know how many I have right now with the audiobooks. We've got three awards that we've got lined up to try and win, and we would love to do that. And we've had some good reviews on the series. So, anything from you?
I'd have to say that I was delightfully surprised when we first got the first Audible back, and the second one from Derek, and we start seeing that traction. I have to be honest, it was quite a realization that it's different media. It comes across, we've read them, we've reread them, we've edited them. We know them backwards and forwards. We know the subtleties. But when I hear Derek's voice, it comes to a different dimension. And it's, I'm not trying to shine him on. It took the story and made it immersive. So it pulled me in. And so it's like, it was, that's why the audibles are so important for us, because I think it teaches us that your next phase is that the big screen. It's the streaming of the present day. The cyber threats, the good guys, the bad guys, the humor, the romance, the travel. We see these as a very enticing series for a screenwriter. And we've even tried doing a screenplay ourselves, and it's like, stick with what you know, Charles, because you can suck at this. And but I can see the us partnering with a good screenwriter and taking this all the way to the national and international scenes.
And two, I think, Paul, we would be really remiss if we did not acknowledge how supportive you have been for the Enigma series and for Breakfield and Burkey. I mean, you've helped position us to get ads at the right time, and reminded us about different things that are going on, and that's part of this community, to help make sure that we continue to help people. And Brian, we've never met you before, but
I'm Brian, and I run Brian's book blog. So
nice.
It's briansbookblog.com if you want to check it out. It's pretty easy to find.
Brian, thank you for taking the time to be able to visit with us.
Sure.
Hopefully, we've given you some new material to be able to cogitate on, or at least make fun of.
Well, I am a techno thriller guy, and I have been eagerly watching the reviews on Audiobook Reviewers. So, by the way, Paul, is one of the competitions they said they were entering, is it happen to be yours?
Probably. There's so many entries I can't keep track.
We should maybe talk about that a little bit if you want. You should talk about it, because you only have a little bit of time left to get entries in.
That's true. By the time this video is out, so entries for the ABR Audiobook Listener Awards come to an end. The entry period comes to an end December 31st, 2018. And you can enter any book, almost every genre. I think I've got most of the bases covered. Published anywhere between November 1st, 2017, all the way to December 31st, 2018. There is a small entry fee, but there's a giant awards ceremony that happens in person. It's going to be vastly different than last year. I think we haven't nailed it down yet, but things are in the works, and it's going to be an amazing party.
And I didn't get to attend last year, but I did listen to the live stream, and it sounded like a ton of fun.
It's usually like a week or two after the Audies. So they're all kind of glumped in there, which makes it hard to travel for some, but it's well worth going. The award ceremony had right around 100 people attend last year.
Wow.
And that was almost to capacity. So we're getting a new venue. So more people can come and check it out, because it was a hell of a good time.
Nice.
So Derek, are you ready to go to Kansas City?
I hope so. I'd be very excited if it happens.
Maybe I'll meet you up in Rochester. We'll fly out of there together.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Good stuff. Well, I want to thank all of you guys for taking some time out of your busy schedules to sit and chat with the audiobook bums like us. Man, that's a good term. I should coin that.
I like
you go.
that.
Thank you so much for being with us. Everybody look out for more in this series coming soon. How exciting is that?
Thank you so much.
An unknown amount of more to come.
Right.
Exactly.
That's my favorite kind.
Yeah.
So Brian and Paul, thank you very much for the interview time, and a very large pleasure, Derek, to have you on the call again.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Nice to meet all of you.
Have a great day.
Great to meet
Be
you
safe
all.
in the snow. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Before we call it quits on another fantabulous episode, I want to give a big shout out to my patrons and supporters. Audiobook narrator James Anderson Foster of the Sorceress Podcast. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to help support this audiobook podcast adventure and get your name mentioned at the end like this, or at the beginning, head on over to patreon.com/audioafterdark. Until next time, Audiobooks After Dark can be found at audioafterdark.org, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean. Keep on listening.